West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Donald Trump claims he'd only be a dictator on day one of a potential second presidency. But a trusted advisor from his first term, Kash Patel, is already drawing up plans to go after his political enemies. And a potential second-term Attorney General, Mike Davis, has already vowed to throw Trump's enemies in a gulag. Joining me now is Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal lawyer. He's now the principal of Crisis X. He's also the host of the Mea Culpa and Political Beatdown podcast and is the author of Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the Department of Justice Against His Critics. Michael, it is good to see you. I'm glad to get a chance to talk to you because you're one of the few people who's actually experienced being thrown in jail at the behest of Donald Trump. If you could just remind us of how that went down. You wrote a book, he didn't like it, and then what happened?
Yeah, then what happened was I was lured down to 500 Pearl Street, where I was asked to sign a document that was designed specifically for me that violated my First Amendment constitutional right. I was not permitted to speak to media. I couldn't write the book. I couldn't publish the book. I couldn't do work on movies. I couldn't speak to the press. It was a complete and total gag order. Well, when myself and my friend, who's a lawyer, Jeffrey K. Levine, turned around and said, hey, this is like a little overbroad and unconstitutional violation of my First Amendment right, they had 3 marshals waiting outside for me, who ultimately remanded me, handcuffed and shackled, and remanded me back for another 16 days of solitary confinement at FCI Otisville. So I am the very first political prisoner held by this country because I refused to waive my First Amendment constitutional right. And I've been yelling this from the rooftop now for 3 years, saying if they could do that to me, imagine what they can and will do to you. And unfortunately, we're at this point right now in American history.
Well, the thing is that, and I ask you that to start off because I think that people still don't take Trump seriously. When he says, I'll only be a dictator on day one, people in the audience laughed. I noted also that when he said, I'll close the border and drill, they cheered. But the first thing that they did was when he said, I'll be a dictator on day one, someone in the audience screamed, yeah. And people in the audience seemed happy about it. So do you feel that at this point, it's one of two things? There are either people in this country who actually crave a dictator Trump and a president for life who is Donald Trump, or they just don't believe he'll do it.
Either way, it doesn't really work. First of all, if he's going to be a dictator on day one, rest assured, I know him better than almost anybody. He won't be a dictator on day two. He will be a king. He will make himself into the Fuhrer, and he will make everybody raise their hand and salute him, Heil Hitler, because that's what he is. That's what he wants. He is an autocratic wannabe with autocratic tendencies. I brought that lawsuit against the United States government simply because I am afraid and I have said this in both in my book, Revenge, publicly on this show with you, Joy, if they did it to me, imagine what they're going to do to you. He's already told people he's going to shut down this station. He wants to jail your president and CEO. He wants to execute Joint Chief of Staff Mark Milley. He wants to, execute Mike Pence. I mean, he's got a hit list of people. He wants to throw everyone into Gitmo. I mean, it's hard to imagine that we're even having this conversation. This is exactly what our forefathers feared hundreds of years ago, that this would happen. And another thing that Donald has told us, again, this isn't me saying it, Joy. It's not you saying it. It's not Liz Cheney saying it. It is Donald Trump saying it when he says on the first day he wants to rewrite the Constitution. Seriously, he wants to strip the power of the judiciary and the legislature and confer all power to the executive branch. Again, that means to him, he wants the military to sign a loyalty oath to him. He wants the 1,600 people that will work for government in the transition team to sign a loyalty oath to him. The only person that asks for loyalty, especially in a loyalty oath, is a dictator, a supreme leader, a monarch, a Führer.
And the reality is that was literally done in Venezuela, where Nicolas Maduro rewrote the Constitution and the laws to make it illegal to run against him, to throw his opponents in jail, to shut down the media. This has happened in our hemisphere, and now he wants to invade Guyana because he wants to grab an oil region for himself. Let me read some polls to you. PRI, Public Religion Research Institute, probably the best pollster out there, they asked about support for authoritarianism in the direction of the country. All Americans saying Republicans, 48% would support an authoritarian in response to the direction the country is going. 38% of independents, even 29% of Democrats. PRI survey is political violence might be necessary to save our country. A third of Republicans said yes. 23% overall said yes, political violence might be necessary. Can you just sort of explain to people, as somebody who knows Trump personally, who knows the kinds of people who are around him, how realistic it is that Donald Trump would use violence to get back into office and to stay in office for life?
He'll do whatever it's necessary for him to take power. He will do whatever is necessary to get back into office, plain and simple. Whether it's through the usage of military or some other nefarious way, he will do whatever is necessary, because with Donald, it's all about winning. Despite the fact he's not winning, he hasn't been winning for several years now. That's his goal. He sees winning the White House back as the only means for him to stay relevant in order to be the rich businessman, the powerful businessman, the president of the United States. This is all that is on his mind. That's all that he's thinking of. He wants to use the presidency of the United States as a get-out-of-jail-free card.
And the reality is he's surrounded by not just people like Kash Patel, not just people like Steve Bannon, who has his own designs on being the apparatchik to a dictator, but people like Kevin McCarthy, who's now leaving. He's leaving the Congress. But before he left, when he was actually the Speaker of the House of Representatives, this is somebody who presided over taking the non-red and pink M&Ms out of Donald Trump's bag of not M&Ms, of Starbursts, because he knew Donald Trump didn't like them. He had no dignity. You can see him there going to bend the knee to Trump after January 6th. So somebody, a normie like Kevin McCarthy, would be willing to bend the knee. Can you think of any Republicans who would resist if Donald Trump got in and then said, you know what, we're just not going to have the next election, I'm staying?
Yeah, I think certainly Chris Christie. I think there are plenty of Republicans that do not want to see the United States lose its Constitution or democracy. I can't imagine that there's an American out there that wants an authoritarian ruler in, running this country. It makes absolutely no sense. It's what makes America great. Not Donald Trump, not authoritarianism, but our democracy and the Constitution. I mean, it's the second greatest document ever written to, to the Ten Commandments. I mean, come on, let's be serious. That is the most important document, not just for the United States, but for the whole world. I've said it a million times. If you have a strong America, you will have a strong world. If you have a weak America, you will have a weak world. And, you know, you used, I forget which country that you used as the example. I always use Russia because that's what Donald wants to be. Now, they may have their constitution and they don't want to call themselves an authoritarian country, but that's exactly what it is. And what's happened to people like Navalny? Anybody that crosses Putin either ends up in prison or somehow, for whatever the reason, jumping out of a window. This is exactly what we're all going to be experiencing if, God forbid, a million times Donald Trump returns to the White House.
It is Thursday, the 7th of December of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, she's our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. And I know some people can only take a little, only a little. Okay, so I was reading that it looks like Melania has put in her picks for all manner of leadership throughout a new Trump administration. All leadership in government. She's put in her choices. Apparently it's from Melania. I don't know. Anyway, Stephen Miller as Attorney General. That'll be grand. Tucker Carlson as Vice President. I don't know. That's like a joke. I'm sure that's a joke. Maybe not. But, as she's made us well aware, she doesn't really care. Do you? Nope, I don't. Because we don't really have to concern ourselves with who might be put in leadership. Well, actually, we do. But ultimately, we don't have to actually worry about living through it again because it is not going to happen. It's not. Now, that doesn't mean that we get to sit on our laurels because, we're not going to go down that road of fascism. I got to tell you, we're already down that road. I'm just saying that I really see people are getting fed up. Every time Trump goes out on the stump, every time he stands out in the lobby outside of a courtroom like today, he's in New York for his fraud trial. I think over the gag order. So he's out in the lobby or the wherever, near the elevators at the courthouse, pontificating as usual, probably violating a gag order. So I think every time that people see that and become more aware. Now, I'm not talking about his diehard fans. That's going to be 30%. I hate to tell you, it's going to be about 30% of the population, which has always been the ratio of the most toxic, anti-social, anti-American. You just don't want them around you. It's going to be 30%. Always has been. Apparently in America, it always will. So you're not going to get those. I'm just saying. A third, got to just write it off. It's the other 2/3 that we're talking about. Okay. So we really, I think that those people are upset. They've seen enough. We don't want it. Well, we didn't want it to begin with, but we got it rammed down our throats. Because just like the Nazis of old, just like the Vlad of our present, use the levers of government against the government to bring it down. Okay? We have to stop that. I just love that they've had decades and decades and decades of think tanks and whatnot stacking the courts. And in all that time, all we heard was how terrible George Soros was for influencing our government. He wants to make people look at everybody equal. We can't have that. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's so wrong with being equal. Isn't that the height of what it is to be an American? Equality for all. But apparently there are some that have more, I don't know, shall we say, autocratic tendencies. No one is my equal. Instead of all boats rising, they think they're sinking. Yeah, these boats aren't coming up to my level. Well, I'm going down to theirs. Can't have that. Might be mired in the muck. And then they come down to our supposed whatever. And these people are engaged in the most vile behaviors. Ooh, God. You think people would get it out of their system by the time they're as old as some of these people are, like the Moms for Liberty people. Well, on the other hand, the tendency to go out and, have a little bit of fun is a middle-aged type of behavior, as, well, demographics and studies have shown. Okay, I guess they were bored. Let's spice it up. Just a little. Yeah. And then they're all hypocrites about it, too. Projection. Laura Trump is out there saying that the only reason that Joe Biden is running for re-election is to keep from going to jail. They just project. A lot of us said that that's why Trump was running in 2016. People forget this guy had all manners of court cases, civil and criminal, coming down the pike. Money laundering schemes with Russian mobsters in New York and Florida. Lying about Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago is supposed to be a resort, not a domicile. And he doesn't care. His neighbors are very upset about it and have been for quite some time. Let alone all the tax BS. So, somewhere along the line, somebody said, run for president. They can't throw you in jail because you're running for president. Use our laws, our customs against us. And that's the result of decades and decades and decades of right-wing agitprop and stacking the deck. But in this case with Trump, I think it was just having a regular mob lawyer. Jeez. They finally got to do what they wanted to do. Trump was extolling the great virtues of Al Capone. Made a little mistake, said Al Capone had only been indicted once, and he's been indicted like 4 times. I think it's actually maybe the indictment is 4, but 91 charges. Capone was indicted 6 times. Okay, just a small little thing there. So even lost that. Trump is a loser. He only won in 2016 because of Russian help. Let's be clear about that. That's what the Mueller report was all about. He couldn't prove any criminal intent, or actually they could, but they had this, remember the secret OLC memo that said, you can't, sitting president, you can't do anything. And then apparently they got another secret OLC memo that says if you're a former Republican president who was conspired with the Russians and stole secret government docs, you can't do anything to them either. They tried going after Joe, and when he found out those documents were in his purview, he said, get them out of here. I don't know what they're doing there. Any number of reasons could occur, and this is actually, I think, what happened in the chain of possession on both Joe's and Pence's documents. An intern or an aide somewhere misplace the box. It happens. And then when you find out about it, when they tell you, you go, oh my God, here, take it. Only with Trump is this idea that everybody acts like Trump. Everybody is corrupt as Trump, so Trump has to be even more corrupt. I have to. He's even said, somebody goes against him, he goes back at him 10 times as bad. That's what he said. I retaliate 10 times worse. Used to send out bone breakers like Cohen and that Slister guy, the big former NYPD cop, strapping guy. I don't know. Usually a thumb to the eye is a pretty good technique when they come after you. Don't try it. If you miss, you might get, choked off. Got to be careful. Anyway, used to send these people out to intimidate people. That's what happened to Stormy Daniels. Had some bone breaker, another one of these guys, I can't remember his name, but, he looks like a Goomba. Threatened her. This guy was a mobster, or at least a wannabe mobster. I would say he is a mobster. Bankrupted casinos. That's why he went into bed with the Russian mob. The New York Sicilian mob said, no more. And the reason he didn't want his taxes looked at while he was running is what we're finding out now. He's been laundering money and lying about the value of his property so he can launder even more money. Run for president. They can't go after you then. Then blame it on Joe. Joe Biden, international crime lord. I mean, it's just ludicrous on his face. And I think people are fed up. We've seen what Donald Trump has been doing for decades and decades and decades. The conspicuous consumption, the thumbing of his nose at every convention that there is. And Joe Biden, taking the train home every weekend to be with his boys because his wife and daughter were killed in an auto accident. Every weekend for decades. You got decades of Trump, decades of Joe, and somehow Joe's the international crime lord. Give me an effing break. I think people are fed up. And as we have seen with these more recent elections, people are fed up. No matter what the media says, the polls say. When it comes election time, that's why Donald Trump and all of that movement says, it's fake, they're stealing it from us. The only reason they think it's being stolen from them is because they have such psychotic egos that everything has been deemed theirs by God on high. Just ask MAGA Mike. Yeah, I spoke to God just days before I was put into this position. We're going to have a Red Sea moment. I'm like Moses. He's going to part the Red Sea. Well, you know what, pal? You are a psychotic heretic. You know? I think people are fed up. All right, enough of that. What do we have in store for you? Sometimes these rants just, I don't know, they just rant. And that was one, and it was. So there you go. Anyway, what do we have in store for you as we continue in this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy here in the Bistro Cafe? And yes, as Michael Cohen said, Trump will do whatever is necessary for him to take power. He will. Selling out the U.S. to anybody, as long as they're loyal. Give me a break. On the rest of the menu, the Coast Guard is promising reforms after an internal review found its members do not feel safe and trust in leadership is eroding. An Air Force Reserve Staff Sergeant has been arrested on felony charges for his role in the January 6th Capitol insurrection. And Jill Biden, our First Lady, was joined with children from military families to help sort toys donated by the White House to the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve Toys for Tots program. We like happy news every now and then. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the union representing German train drivers has called for a 24-hour strike that will hit passenger service. And a conglomerate of unions in Norway will take action against Tesla in solidarity with its Swedish colleagues, who are demanding that the Texas-based automaker sign a collective bargaining agreement. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Today is the day that we are not using any of the Washington Post, and if you don't know why, you will. But no WAPO today. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Susan Haig. U.S. Coast Guard officials are promising reforms after an internal review sparked by reports of sexual assault and harassment found that too many of its members do not feel safe and trust in leadership is eroding. The wide-ranging 90-day review that was released yesterday, Wednesday, calls for an end to a permissive environment that extends to inappropriate jokes and comments and a greater focus on preventing inappropriate or unhealthy behavior at the earliest stages. Now, many of the recommendations in the report stem from interviews with hundreds of Coast Guard members at locations throughout the service, including from victims of sexual assault and harassment dating from the 1960s to the present. These victims expressed deep-rooted feelings of pain and loss, and a loss of trust in the organization, the report says. Acknowledging this broken trust is an important first step in reestablishing it. The review was ordered by Admiral Linda Fagan, Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, after the service came under fire for not widely disclosing a 6-year internal investigation into dozens of cases of sexual assault and harassment at the Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut from 1988 to 2006. The investigation, first revealed by CNN, was known as Operation Fouled Anchor and identified 62 substantiated incidents of rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment that occurred at the New London Academy or by Academy cadets. U.S. Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut and chair of the U.S. Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security, criticized the new review in a statement yesterday, saying it still does not hold anyone accountable for past failures, particularly those at the Coast Guard Academy. Senator Richard Blumenthal, also a Democrat from Connecticut, said it was unacceptable. The report did not recommend accountability measures for that past misconduct and cover-up. A memorandum from Fagan released with it, acknowledges the actions she has ordered to address improper conduct will not impact cases stemming from Operation Fouled Anchor, but the memo said the service is responding to congressional requests concerning those cases while the Coast Guard Investigative Service is conducting additional inquiries. In the memo, Fagan requires specific actions be taken, including tailored training to help personnel from the newest recruits to senior executives cultivate a positive workplace climate. That also includes developing more effective leadership courses and increasing oversight of the cadet corps at the academy. Fagan ordered plans to be developed by 2025 that expand in-person bystander intervention training and provide sexual assault prevention, response, and recovery training for all Coast Guard personnel. She also ordered improved physical security throughout the cadet dormitory at the academy. Durkin Richer of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A staff sergeant in the U.S. Air Force Reserve from Texas was arrested yesterday, Wednesday, on felony charges related to the January 6, 2021 riot. I need to tell Alana it wasn't a riot. It was an insurrection, where authorities say he pushed and grabbed police officers and called one officer a traitor. Yeah, that's what they do at riots. No, that's what they do at insurrections. Kyle Douglas McMahon, 41 of Watauga, was taken into custody in Dallas nearly 3 years after authorities say he joined the pro-Trump mob that attacked the Capitol wearing a red Make America Great Again hat with God written on it in black marker. I guess his face wasn't blurred out. Good. After the riot, his Google search history included, "Can I resign from the military if I do not want to serve an illegitimate president?" and "Capitol terrorists identified," according to court papers. He faces felony charges of assaulting, resisting or impeding officers, and obstruction of law enforcement, as well as additional misdemeanor offenses. There was no lawyer immediately named in the court docket. The voicemail box was full for a number listed for the perp, and a person who answered the phone at the number listed for a relative declined to comment, and who could blame him? The Air Force Reserve Command said in an email statement that McMahon is a reservist at the Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base in Fort Worth, Texas. He is a staff sergeant in the 301st Fighter Wing Medical Squadron and a traditional reservist who is not actively participating in the unit, the command said. Authorities say McMahon was seen on camera pushing back and forth against an officer outside a Capitol door before going into the building. During another encounter with law enforcement inside, prosecutors say he attempted to swat an officer and grabbed an officer's fingers, appearing to crush them in his hands. Before he left the Capitol, he was captured on video telling one officer, "You're a traitor." Later that day, he was seen outside the Capitol wearing a green ballistics helmet and carrying an American flag. Bill of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Jill Biden and children from military families yesterday, Wednesday, helped sort toys donated by the White House to the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve Toys for Tots program, which gives playthings to needy children. The children also enjoyed skating on the South Lawn's new holiday ice rink. So, did you have fun ice skating? The First Lady asked about the rink, which she opened last week. I think the rink is really neat, don't you? I love seeing it. I can see it outside my window. The annual event typically is held at an area military base. Biden said she brought it to the White House because our holiday theme celebrates children and the way all of you experience the season. She said military children also serve their country and praise their bravery, kindness, and compassion. You may not hear this a lot, but kids have something important to teach us grown-ups, especially military kids like you, Biden said. You teach us how to be brave, even when we're scared. You teach us how to make friends, even when we don't know anyone. You teach us how to reach out a hand to other people in need. And we need that courage, kindness, and compassion now more than ever. Last year, Toys for Tots provided over 24.5 million toys to 10 million children, said Brigadier General Valerie Jackson, Commanding General of the 4th Marine Logistics Group. And with your support, we hope to reach even more this year. Indeed. Let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's Science Quickly. I'm Karen Hopkin. Swimming against a current can be tough, but imagine having to do it in a fluid with the consistency of corn syrup. That's more or less the challenge faced by mammalian sperm as they race to reach an egg.
That's such a hard race for sperm. It's like a very tough marathon.
Reza Nosrati is a mechanical engineer at Monash University in Melbourne. He says that sperm are not deterred by tide or averted by viscosity. In fact, Reza and his team have found that having to navigate the physiological slalom of the female reproductive tract actually helps sperm swim with optimal efficiency and may guide them to their desired destination. The results appear in the journal Cell Reports Physical Science.
When you look at the female reproductive tract, I think it's been known for such a long time that it's a very complicated environment.
As sperm swim upstream, they make their way through secretions that vary in thickness and flow rate. One of the first hurdles comes at the cervix, the gateway to the uterus.
Right at the port of entry to the cervix, there is a very strong flow because of mucous secretions by the cells within the cervix.
That current helps to flush out any harmful disease-causing bacteria, which are not known to be strong swimmers.
Then it's kind of like a barrier and a filter to keep the environment essentially favorable for fertilization.
And once sperm get to the fallopian tube, where fertilization typically takes place, they face not only fluids that are gooier, but a course whose undulating curves lead to blind alleys.
And to the increasing level of geometrical confinement that the sperm need to leverage to find their way forward.
But rather than hampering the swimmer's progress, maybe these changes serve as cues, or clues, that give the cleverest cells a leg, or in this case a flagellum, up.
Would that be a mechanism that enables sperms of better quality or smarter cells to adjust their swimming behavior in order to gain some competitive advantage over millions of other sperm cells that are swimming in the reproductive tract?
To find out, Reza and the gang put bull sperm to the test.
We use bull sperm because it's, in terms of its morphology and shape and beating behavior, is quite similar to human sperm.
But they didn't want to look at sperm by the handful.
We wanted to study these behaviors at the single cell level, looking at the same cell while we're replacing the flow, while we're changing the viscosity.
And they wanted to focus on the flagellum because it's that whip-like tail that propels a sperm forward.
Now, how that flagellum beating and how the movement of that structure changes in response to change in flow condition was completely ignored.
So, the researchers built a sperm-sized testing arena, or in engineer speak.
We designed a microfluidic channel.
Farron Yazdan-Perast is a research fellow in mechanical engineering at Monash University. She says each microfluidic channel
had 3 different inlets for different viscosities, so we can expose sperm to different viscosities, and also we had different flow rates to also mimic the fluid condition in the female reproductive tract.
To make sure the sperm didn't swim out of her microscopic field of view, Farron tethered their heads to the chamber floor, which was also key to keeping an eye on things once the researchers cranked open the faucet.
The flow could push the cells out of our observation window.
But with the sperm heads stuck to the surface, the researchers were free to fiddle with the fluid dynamics.
And then I'm looking at the cell while it can't go anywhere. Then we could see in real time how that cell responds to that change in the environment.
So, after all this setup, what did they find?
What we observed was that the viscosity had a more dominant role than the shear rate in influencing the sperm flagellal waveform and the overall sperm behavior.
And I think it was a little bit surprising. Like when we started this study, I was expected to see a more dominant effect from shear rate than viscosity. But we actually realized it's the other way around. The viscosity plays a more crucial role.
When the sperm are swimming through fluid that's more syrupy,
they reduce their flagellar beat amplitude. Then they beat with a smaller wave. Those cells who can demonstrate this type of behavior actually swim in a way that is more energy efficient.
And that behavior could give them a biological boost.
Maybe there's another cell which is trying much harder, but they're not doing it the right way and they can't propel forward.
So a sperm that's able to change gears and breeze effortlessly along,
that would be the sperm that can reach the site of fertilization quicker and get to the egg.
Reza says the findings could advance fertility treatments, in which a clinician chooses which sperm to present to an egg.
Maybe when it comes to treatment strategies, we need to move towards media that are more viscous and more closely mimic those properties of the in vivo fluids, because that can potentially lead to selecting better cells and a strategy which is better informed by that natural swimming behavior.
In other words, make the sperm work for it.
I think if you have a sample which have cells, relatively motile cells, then making the race a little bit tougher increases your chance of getting the best cell.
Whether a viscosity challenge could lead to better outcomes for treatments like IVF.
We need to do animal studies to make sure what we are essentially hypothesizing makes sense.
While they wait for those results, Reza and Farron will continue to talk about their work. Or try to.
It's a bit weird to start a conversation about sperm and these kind of things.
I think starting talking about it is always difficult.
Yeah.
But when you start it, especially in parties or stuff like that, people will follow up and they remember it.
Even without the party, I suspect I may have tethered bull sperm stuck in my head for some time to come. Science Quickly is produced by Jeffrey Delvicio, Tulika Bose, Kelso Harper, and Corinne Leung. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And visit scientificamerican.com for updated and in-depth science news. For Scientific American's Science Quickly, I'm Karen Hopkin.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. October 26th, a federal circuit court judge ordered Georgia's redistricting maps to be redrawn to include majority-minority opportunity districts for Congress, state Senate, and state House. Legislators appear to be manipulating the new maps, too. Judge Stephen Jones ordered one additional congressional district be added to allow a realistic chance of minority voters electing the candidates of their choice under the 1965 Voting Rights Act, Section 2. He also required 2 additional opportunity state Senate districts and 5 additional state House districts. The new maps include those districts, but while it included a new majority-minority congressional district, the legislature dismembered another majority black district served by black Congresswoman Lucy McBath. A letter from the Georgia ACLU and other plaintiffs said, in sum, the committee plan operates a shell game in which black voters in the vote dilution area identified by the court gain no new opportunities, and districts that the court specifically struck down remain intact. Democracy Docket reports that December 4th, the Georgia Senate approved the still gerrymandered maps. The new maps must be adopted by the legislature, signed by Governor Brian Kemp, and submitted to the courts for review by December 8th. Whether black Georgians get a fair shake is still up in the air. We have more on Georgia's gerrymandered maps and the groups taking action at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1907. That was the day that troops from the 22nd Infantry arrived in Goldfield, Nevada, on the orders from President Teddy Roosevelt. 1,900 gold miners organized by the Western Federation of Miners were on strike. They walked out in late November when cash-strapped mine operators began paying them in scrip. Local 77 held considerable power in the mines and the town for 2 years. They had won the 8-hour day both for their members and established it as an industrial standard throughout Goldfield. By 1907, the mine operators and Nevada Governor John T. Sparks had had enough. Wobblies were on trial elsewhere, falsely accused of murdering Idaho Governor Frank Stautenberg for his role in the 1899 miner strike in Coeur d'Alene. Many miners in Goldfield had been active in that strike. Sparks feared that with no force capable of protecting the operators, another mine war was inevitable. The mine owners convinced Sparks that the miners were heavily armed and capable of dynamiting mine property. At the same time, the operators tried to provoke local 77 miners to engage in illegal activities for which they could be arrested. They also used the financial panic of 1907 to pay workers in scrip and as a pretext to smash the union, even though the gold standard remained relatively stable. The owners then made their moves. They reduced wages and threatened workers with mass firings and strikebreakers. But the union remained disciplined and peaceful during the strike. It was clear by the following March that the presence of federal troops gave the mine owners the impetus they needed to drive local 77 miners out of the mines and out of Goldfield.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 46 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting temperatures considerably cooler than yesterday. Steady rain this morning and showers continuing in the afternoon. Winds will be out of the west-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Looks like we're getting about a quarter inch of rain for today. A few showers early tonight, then clouds lingering later on. Lows in the mid-30s, winds light and variable. And then mostly cloudy skies tomorrow. Early will become partly cloudy later in the day. Highs in the mid-40s, winds light and variable. And we may have what we call a drying out, just means no rain falling, but should get that for a couple of days, then picking up again on Saturday, Sunday. Looks like pollen is rated as none here in our town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 19 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at level 1. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.02 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 45 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 42 with a rain shower. Rome is 51 and clear. Bongram is 42 and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 23 degrees with light snow. Hong Kong is 64 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 51 and clear. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 71 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and fair. Chicago, Illinois is 43 and sunny. And New York, New York is 37 degrees Fahrenheit with light rain. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. That's the World Desk of the Associated Press, brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A union representing German train drivers yesterday, Wednesday, called its members to strike for 24 hours this week, following the breakdown of talks with the main national operator in what is shaping up to be an unusually difficult dispute over pay and working hours. The GDL union said the strike will affect passenger services operated by state-owned Deutsche Bahn from 10 p.m. on Thursday until 10 p.m. on Friday local time. Freight trains will be hit from 6 p.m. on Thursday. That's today. The walkout follows a 24-hour strike on November 16th when Deutsche Bahn ran a much-reduced long-distance schedule, as it has on previous occasions when GDL took industrial action. GDL's strength among drivers and some other railway personnel varies regionally, and some regional services run by private operators are not affected by the dispute. Limited warning strikes are a common tactic in German pay negotiations, but GDL may soon expand its action. On November 24th, GDL Chairman Klaus Walewski declared that negotiations with Deutsche Bahn had failed after only 2 rounds of talks. The union has already started a ballot of its members on full-fledged strikes and plans to announce the result on December 19th. The central issue is the union's call for shift workers' hours to be reduced from 38 to 35 hours per week without a pay reduction, a demand at which employers so far have balked. GDL is seeking a raise of about $600 per month U.S. for employees, plus a one-time payment of about 3,000 euros to counter inflation. The 600 per month pans out to 555 euros, by the way. Deutsche Bahn has said it made an offer that amounts to an 11% raise. A dispute between the railway operator and a rival union, the larger and traditionally less aggressive EVG, was settled earlier this year after both sides accepted a proposal by arbitrators.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Continuing on with our No Washington Post Day, this final amuse-bouche is brought to us also by staff at the World Desk of the Associated Press. A conglomerate of unions in Norway said yesterday, Wednesday, it will take action against Tesla in solidarity with its Swedish colleagues who are demanding that the Texas-based automaker sign a collective bargaining agreement. Jorn Eggum, the head of Fellesforbundet, or the United Federation of Trade Unions, why didn't they just say that? Said if Tesla does not accept the demand from Sweden's powerful metal workers union, IF Metall, by December 20th, we will proceed, and this is in quotes, with the implementation of boycott actions, end quote. Fellesforbundet is organizing, among others, employees in car repair workshops. This is a clear signal to Tesla that they cannot transport Swedish Teslas through Norway, Eggum said, adding it was too early to say exactly what measures will be implemented. If they attempt it anyway, it will be met with actions, and we will take the measures necessary to make this work. Oh, the Black Sea is rather deep. Dock workers at Sweden's 4 largest ports already have stopped the delivery of Tesla vehicles in solidarity with the 130 members of IF Metall who walked out on October 27th at 7 workshops across Sweden, where the popular electric cars are serviced. Several Swedish unions, including the postal workers, have since joined in a wave of solidarity with IF Metall's demands. Tesla, which is non-unionized globally, has no manufacturing plant in Sweden, but has several service centers. The move comes a day after the United Federation of Workers in neighboring Denmark said there had been speculation that Tesla would deliver its cars to Danish ports and transport them on trucks to Sweden after Swedish dock workers blocked the reception of Tesla cars there. The head of Norway's union, which claims to have nearly 170,000 members, said its union members were taking up the fight against a union-hostile company. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.